Ki ngā mate huhua o te wā, haere, haere, haere atu rā. Kia tātou kua mahue nei, tēnā tātou katoa i tēnei ata o Paraire, te 18 o Hurae, Tangaroa, Amua o Hongongoi. An acknowledgement to those who have passed, and an acknowledgement to those of us who are here in this time of Tangaroa Amua, the last quarter of this current calendar month. Welcome in to our Honouring Te Tiriti in Practice workshop, Weaving Equity, Culture and Learning Together, part 1 of 3.
Mōrena koutou, and welcome from me in Ōtautahi. And it's great to see you here online. Nau mai, haere mai.
He pō, he ao, he ao. Tā kiri mai te ata, kōrihi ngā manu, ka ao, ka ao, ka awatea. There is darkness, there is daylight, the morning has dawned, the birds are singing, it is day, it is day, it is daylight. And a reference to Ko Ngā Mō Teatea, an 1853 publication of a book and collection of ancient Mō Teatea, now of course an important karakia that we can use to open the day, to welcome in the light and opportunities for learning. Tēnā tātou.
And welcome again to you all. And here's a chance for mihi, your opportunity to introduce yourself. Actually, I see so many of you are well trained that you have already introduced yourself into the chat, which is fantastic. I'm sure, like me, you've loved seeing how many people are there tahia from around the country, and so many people, so many whānau that we know or have worked with or have met at ACE conferences over the years. Really lovely to see you all. Thank you. As I said, Tahia and I will just take a brief time to introduce ourselves. Ko Jennifer Lei aho, he kai mahi aho ki ACE Aotearoa me Ako Aotearoa. And many of you know that I do some work for ACE as the Teaching Standards Advisor, and also I'm the Southern Manager for Ako Aotearoa. You can see on the screen there that I have had a lot of experience in adult education, and particularly I want to acknowledge my days with the Department of Corrections at Christchurch Women's Prison. So I've had a long career in working in adult education. In all of those places, you can see the University of Canterbury and at Polytech here in Christchurch. I'm fortunate to live here in Ōtautahi with my husband and my son Jack, and my daughter Millie lives in Wellington. Kia ora.
Tēnā koe, Jen, and I want to continue the acknowledgements of everyone who is here. We really appreciate your time this morning. I have written into the chat my iwi affiliations, but I will start my mihi there again. Ko rangi tāne, ko Ngāti Kahungunu ki Wairarapa, ko Ngāti Hāmua, ko Ngāti Ira, ko te arawa whānui ngā iwi, ko te tāhia hurihanga nui tōku ingoa. I'm known as Tāhia by my whānau, and that has become a well-known nickname in my professional worlds, and there are many. But first and foremost, I am a daughter, a granddaughter, a sister, and a mama of 2. We are currently residing in Whakaoriori Māsitin, which is here in Wairarapa. It is very cold today, but there is a bit of sunshine, which is heating me up, and I'm very happy about that. I have been actively involved in teaching for almost 2 decades now, and specifically within the ACE sector for a little over 10 years, with the beginning of my teaching and education facilitation journey starting at the Community Ed Centre in Wellington. I am now mainly working for my own company, ACE Aotearoa Limited, which provides education consultancy, cultural advisory, language teaching for Te Reo Māori predominantly. And as you can see, part of that work is Tiriti o Waitangi and Doctrine of Discovery education around the motu and abroad. It is my pleasure to be here on behalf of Reorua in partnership with ACE Aotearoa and our wonderful facilitators, Jen and Viv. Tēnā koutou.
As I said, I'm the advisor for the ACE teaching standards, and it's a wonderful opportunity to work with people around the motu, around what makes a good tutor. And I want to especially welcome those of you who have been a part of the Successfully Teaching Adults workshop that Ty and I have delivered to many of you I see online already around the country. As many of you will have seen on the ACE website, there's a real focus and a real a lead, really, from the teaching standards, led by, beg your pardon, the guiding principle of ako, the last word you can see there on your screen on that slide. But also these three values of rangatiratanga, manaakitanga, and whanaungatanga. And so I just want to acknowledge that these are really key principles that we incorporate into the work that we do around being and aiming to be the best facilitator, the best kaiako we can do. We can be. Rangatiratanga is about learner autonomy. Manaakitanga, in short, is about respectful environment. And whanaungatanga, as many of you know, is about the importance of building those relationships. You can find out more on the website, but we'll carry on for now focused on Te Tiriti, but we wanted to give that background as to why we're talking about this particular indicator today. Kia ora.
So quality teaching and learning environments are key foundations of being part of ACE Aotearoa. This workshop is one part of three. And so I'm going to read what you're expecting from us today. This workshop will explore how the ACE teaching standards reflect ACE Aotearoa as a Tiriti-based and Tiriti-led organisation. We will examine practical ways to honour te mana o te tiriti o Waitangi and what this means for our everyday practice as adult educators in community education settings. I want to acknowledge that this is the second time we have run this, having had a trial run last year. The feedback from that session was overwhelmingly positive, but we also took note that 1 hour for lots of different explorations was simply not enough. So this hour is focusing solely on what I've just read aloud, and the ACE teaching standard that we are applying in this session is 5.2, how we form strong relationships with hapu to ensure equity and cultural responsiveness in teaching. And what we want you to think about as we move through the content and the prompts is how you do that both at an individual level, either professionally or personally, but also as an organisation.
And as Tahi has said, as well as thinking about those ideas, you'll have a chance shortly to talk about it. But here's an introduction activity. And what's lovely about this is it comes from Tangata Tiriti, the treaty people, and you can see that reference at the end in our slide there. So it's an activity for us to look at now and think about matching the words on the left column to the words on the right column. So you can see a range of words there that are probably familiar to you. But maybe you're a little unclear as to the correct definition. And, of course, we're going to have the correct definitions first, but have a go yourself. Have a look and think, do I really know the difference between Māori with a capital M and Māori with a little m as a lowercase m? So what Tahir and I will do again is turn our cameras off so you can really focus on this. Some of you might like to write down the words on the left and then align them to the words on the right. As I said earlier, you'll get the slides afterwards, so you can, just do it in your head if that's easier for you. Or if you're in a room with someone else, you might like just to share it out loud. So take a minute now and think about, do I really know what these definitions are, and could I answer when someone says to me, what's the difference between Pākehā and Tauiwi, as Tahir just asked me just before. Okay, so we'll just take a minute with our cameras off. Kia ora. So there's our slide there. Please feel free to read and see how you got on. I hope you can see your answers there. The difference between Māori with a higher case, uppercase, beg your pardon, M, and Māori with a lowercase m. So in case you weren't familiar with that, it gives you that answer. And equally, it gives you the answer there, the difference between Pākehā and Tauiwi. Does anyone have any questions about this slide, about their answers, or anything we need to add in, do you think, Tahir?
I just want to reference tangata tiriti, treaty people, are those who created this resource that we all have access to, and to remind you that we will include that in the resource list at the end and via email. But this was a group of terms and keywords that have been analysed, that have been translated by experts, and that have been confirmed by tangata whenua linguist experts as accurate or correct translations of the terms in reference to Te Tiriti or Waitangi. And so it is both important that we understand these words in the context pre Te Tiriti o Waitangi, 1840, and during the time of the penning or the writing of Te Tiriti o Waitangi. And then, of course, to think about how these terms may have changed or transformed or evolved over time to their current meanings in today's modern contemporary context. I can't see any questions in the chat, so I'm going to move into this next slide. Now, one thing we really wanted to make sure we were doing was layering meaning with te whakapapa o ngā kupu. And what I mean by that is to really understand together in our foundational knowledge shared as an ACE Aotearoa collective what it actually means to say whānau, iwi, hapu, and rangatira from a Māori perspective with the roots of Māori perspective. And so the slide you are looking at now is from the late, great Dr. Moana Jackson. Most of us know him as a sweet kahungunu koro, as an incredible academic, a lawyer, a tikanga expert, and few of us know him or knew him as a linguist. Now, he challenges us to always think about Māori words with their Māori whakapapa, their origin. And so hopefully this will create a more rounded, a more holistic, and a more Māori, with a lowercase m, understanding of these words that you can interpret pre-Te Tiriti, during Te Tiriti, and now in today's world. Whānau is and was and always has been a verb, an action word, and it means to give birth to or be born from. Iwi comes from the root word ko iwi, which is the Māori word for bones, and talks about the DNA connections we have in our genealogies. So absolutely, iwi means the extended kinship group of one, or the collective descendants of a common ancestor. And so if we can start to think about us being born from the bones of our ancestors, it gives you a broader understanding of where the concept of iwi has come from and how it is applied as an authority today. Hapu means the swelling of life, and hapu is something we give to the idea of pregnancy, the concept of pregnancy, but also a pregnant woman. And it means the everyday comings and goings, the political system, the social system, and the economic system that people are interacting with, again, as a collective. And that is important to understand because at the signing of Te Tiriti, rangatira, who were the weavers of those large groups of people together, or the leaders, they were representing hapu groups, kingship groups that were sharing resource in their own autonomous political, social, and economic systems set up with kawa and tikanga, the indigenous Māori laws of the land. And so before we move into the instruction of our activity and tasks that we would like you to do in smaller groups, we want you to understand that word hapu, because of course it relates not only to the history of Te Tiriti, but also its function in today's world. We want you to understand from our perspective as ACE Aotearoa what we mean when we say Te Tiriti or Waitangi. So what we mean is Te Tiriti or Waitangi, the only valid treaty.
It was also an agreement between rangatira and the Queen, and it wasn't an agreement between Māori and non-Māori.
It follows on from the first founding document of Aotearoa, signed a few years previous, He Whakaputanga, or the Declaration of Independence, and it did not cede Māori sovereignty to the Queen, Queen Victoria of England.
And also it gave the Queen permission to appoint a governor to govern, at the time, the need for Pākehā lawlessness.
Continuing, it secured Māori tino rangatiratanga and gave Māori British rights as well.
It's good to know that by the end of 1840, 500 plus rangatira had signed it. So an English sheet was signed by only 39 rangatira. Te Tiriti o Waitangi didn't set up Parliament. Parliament and its processes are actually a breach of it. The last point we just want to articulate here is it was never intended to be reduced to those principles that are often used, like the 3 Ps. So I know that that was common, but never was the intention of generalization.
I just wanted to add before we look at ACE as a beautiful example of what it means to be Tiriti-led, is to conclude with our understanding of Te Tiriti with this wonderful challenge again from Pa Moana Jackson. And this comes from a recent academic journal called Imagining Decolonisation, a wonderful book on read if you haven't already had a go at it. I quote, "If there is proof of the ongoing presence of colonisation, it is the constant Crown reinterpretation and redefinition of what the treaty promised. The treaty was an amazing document for its time and for today because it offered people, no matter where they came from, a place in this land. It said you were welcome to make your home here, but that welcome also had a certain list of obligations that it placed on those who came. And one of those was that you can make your home in this land, but not at the expense of the people who are already here. But of course, colonisation always works at the expense of the people who are already here. And that's what we are challenged with today as a Tiriti-based or Tiriti-led organisation. So over to you, Jen, to maybe elaborate on what it means for ACE Aotearoa to be that, to embody it and to practice it.
Thanks, Tahia. And this was the warm-up slide I spoke about briefly before. Warm-up as giving you some ideas about how to be Te Tiriti-led, because we're really lucky with ACE Aotearoa in that they are a leader for us around this whole way of being, showing how they are Te Tiriti-led. So, as many of you know, I've been a member of ACE Aotearoa for a long time, and it's always an area that I've felt particularly proud of because we've worked really hard to ensure that we are Te Tiriti-led. And how we've done that is acknowledging Māori as tangata whenua and then tangata tiriti as citizens of our shared country. So tangata tiriti was the first time I heard those two words together in ACE Aotearoa. It's more commonplace now, but I think we have been one of the leaders in that area. As well, we ensure that Te Tiriti a Waitangi is a constitutional value. We make sure that we have two caucuses. So when we have annual general meeting, we have an opportunity for the tangata whenua caucus to meet and the tangata tiriti caucus to meet. I really like the last point there, that all policies, practices and communications reflected must be consistent with Te Tiriti o Waitangi. So you can see that we have great alignment with what we're doing as an organisation and what is in our constitution. And I think the practices of ACE Aotearoa certainly match the sentiments behind a framework around being Te Tiriti o Waitangi led. Anything to add, Tahia?
No, just to note that when you get these slides, we would encourage you to read the words on that slide because they are words derived directly from the Constitution. So we can talk about how wonderful it is that we have a co-governance model, that we see tangata whenua and tangata tiriti perfectly, equally represented at all levels of the organisation. But I think it's actually quite heartwarming to see that it's actually embedded in the legal framework of our organisation too. So what we might do, Viv has thankfully created small groups of breakout spaces. We will give you 10 to 15 minutes to get to know one another very quickly and to maybe think about how you as an adult educator or a community organisation can meaningfully and practically honour Te Tiriti o Waitangi and how you might already be or perhaps want to demonstrate that you are Tiriti-based or Tiriti-led in everyday practice. And if we have time at the end, we will share back some of those ideas. If we don't have time for all of those ideas to be expressed here today, we will bring them both into session 2 of our 3-part series, and we'll make sure you will have access to those as a resource. But we will see you soon in those breakout spaces. Hea kune. Actually, we've got half of our groups back and we're just waiting for the rest to join us. If you're eager to share some of your ideas in the meantime, we have Menti open on screen. Menti is where you can use a second device or another tab on your laptop. Go to menti.com, enter the code and express your ideas. You might have individual ones or parts from your discussion just now, and we can see it live in real time. What will eventually happen is this data will be captured, and we will use this as a wonderful, helpful resource for all of us that will be, of course, distributed with the other resources at the end of the session.
We hope that session together was helpful for sharing ideas, hearing from others, and thinking together about ways you can be more Te Tiriti-led in the way that you work with your staff, and the way that you work with your educators, and the way that you work with your learners. And it's great, we've got a couple of people who have written there onto Menti already. So people have been talking about learning about the history of the place I live and work in, reading the text of Te Tiriti, ensuring the organisation's board has Māori representation, ideally manawa whenua. So some great answers there. They keep popping up, which is lovely with Menti. Include karakia and whanaungatanga to start workshops, weave in other te ao Māori aspects. And I know many of you try and do a lot of these, but it's great if you're not doing them to look and think, well, which one of these could I do? Building connections, utilising expertise, making those connections with local kaumātua and hapu. Yeah, lots of ideas there about establishing those relationships with local hapu and iwi. And what policies we already have that are lacking reference to tangata whenua or te tiriti or Waitangi. So sort of doing an audit on your policies. That's a great idea. Embed commitments in constitutions like ACE has. And we have a dedicated Māori team who support Māori akonga and offer noho marae. So lots of great ideas there, Tahia.
Wonderful ideas that will keep being fed into Menti. So while I've closed the screen to go back into our slides, please keep those ideas coming. And at the end of the session, it will be captured as data that you can print out when you get them sent to you, or you can reference again electronically. We really appreciate hearing what it is you're already doing, or what it is that you're wanting to aspire to in the near future. We're going to go back to our slides now, because we did want to again provide opportunity for the sharing of suggestions. And so to kick us off, I want to reference Engaging Well Limited. This is an organisation who teach anti-racism and the history of Aotearoa, New Zealand, as well as Te Tiriti or Waitangi. And you may see a familiarity because I am biased. These are my father, my paps, Hone Hurihanganui, and my younger brother, Api, or Aperahama Hurihanganui, who co-own and lead this space of education. Their suggestions for us as ACEs are to make a formal commitment to Te Tiriti in the implementation plan. So we're thinking about higher level ideas here. The integration, which is something someone mentioned in our Menti brainstorm, of Te Tiriti or Waitangi wording or principles in policy is a really good start, which can then be reflected in practice. And one of their suggestions is including Te Tiriti or Waitangi commitments and expectations in JDs, our job descriptions, and our job advertisements, so that it starts from before the beginning of the culture of a business or an organisation, that from the get-go, the expectation is all staff as part of this organisation are leading or basing themselves in the foundational constitution of Aotearoa, New Zealand, and what it means to either be tangata whenua or tangata tiriti. Now, there are many, many examples, of course, of how we can, at an individual level, do this. So I'm going to pass it back to Jen, who's going to share another wonderful resource that we all have access to about how we can, as people, embody te mana o te tiriti. Kia ora, Jen.
Kia ora tahia. Yes, and some of you will have seen this resource before. It comes from a Samoan woman in Ōtautahi, from Wena Tafunai. She has written the 17 Habits of a Valued Treaty Partner. Now, I'm not going to read 17 out to you, but just wanted to alert you to these because I find them really helpful for myself to skim read and remind myself, am I doing my best to be a valued treaty partner? So the reference to her work will be in our reference page for you. But there's some great ideas there. Here's one here. Yeah, I like that, and this has happened, Sandy, the fourth one there. I need the advice from Maori when I heed, beg your pardon, the advice from Maori when I seek it. And do not treat it like a shopping trip for advice to find the advice that is agreeable to me. I am humble. So she's got some lovely ways of wording, ways that we can interact. So that's just a couple of the slides there, or a couple of slides with a few of my favourite ones, if you like. The top one, I accept and embrace Māori protocols and try not to colonise them with my own protocols and beliefs. So yeah, there's a lot in there. So do have a look if you're wanting to think more about honouring Te Tiriti and how you can do that in your area in adult education.
What I find particularly helpful with this list is that it's in plain English to start
Yeah.
with. So it's easy to engage with and interact with. It's also a resource that we can share with our own learners, with our colleagues, and with our own whānau members. I've actually shared this list with my young tamariki, who are 7 years old and 10 years old, respectively. And they can use it as a measure of not only for themselves as tangata whenua and tangata tiriti, because they have Pākehā ancestry and their father is tangata tiriti, being Italian. But they can also use it as a way to describe or articulate how they can best support others, i.e. their peers and the people that they are interacting with every day, about being better citizens, basically, of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Yeah, so
Now,
there, oh, sorry, yes.
no, I was just going to say, we have come to the near end of our session, but like Jen said earlier, we've got this wonderful list of resources and references, and we probably did want to pause to just check in with the chat if there are any burning questions, or from anyone on the floor, if there are any burning questions before we conclude our session today.
How do we weave more te ao Māori practices without seeming tokenesque?
Okay, my immediate reaction to that is intent and purpose. And my second reaction to that is make sure you do it with expertise. So either you are provided with or acquiring your knowledge from an expert in those areas first, both as an individual and a part of an organisation, i.e. ongoing PD in that space, and then regurgitating or practicing what it is that you're learning. Or you have an internal dedicated role or person that is supporting alongside you to put those things into practice. And that's how we take away the tokenistic approach, because the intent is meaningful. You have tangata whenua engagement leading the space that are being valued and invested in, i.e. they might be on salary. And you yourself are continuing to develop the learning, which will help the quality of what you are using and practicing, but also keep you up to date and relevant. which is what we notice with tokenistic practices. You tick and then you put it away. What we want is it's living and breathing and evolving and transforming.
How do you think not colonizing the principles with own protocols and beliefs aligns with respecting all cultures in Aotearoa?
Yeah.
And I also just want to say that is a probably more relevant question for parts 2 and 3, which looks at culturally responsive application. And so hold on to that. Stay with us at the end. We can absolutely interact, but bring it again to parts 2 and 3. I've noted it down, and we will definitely be covering that in parts 2 and 3. So I encourage you all to be in those second and third sessions as well. Now I'm going to close us officially with our kai kōhau. The kai kōhau is an alternative to karakia, and it is something we do at the beginning of a huge shift in te taiao, the natural environment. So I want to acknowledge that we have just come out of the celebrations and the tuku, or the letting go of grief of the matariki season and the puanga season. And we are about to finish or complete the second calendar month of this new year. And so the kai kōhau is a way that we can utter desires and wishes aloud as a collective, but also a tikanga way of closing today's session with positivity. No mai ngā hua, no mai ngā pai, no mai kia nui kia hāwere ai, tihei mauriora. Welcome all things that grow, welcome all things that are good in abundance forevermore.